My name is Jennifer Bennett. I'm 32 years old, and I used to believe that love was about proving you were enough. Now I know that if you have to prove it, it was never love in the first place. When I think back to those early days with Marcus, I see them in soft tones. Coffee steam, curling through morning light, laughter spilling over burnt pancakes, his lazy smile when I tucked my hair behind my ear. We were two people building a world out of small gestures, or so I thought. Marcus was the kind of man who filled a room without trying. Sharp suit, sharper ambition. He worked in marketing strategy for a luxury brand and carried himself like every decision he made had weight. I admired that once the focus, the drive. I used to joke that he never walked anywhere he advanced. I was steadier, an illustrator who freelanced from home drawing quiet things, faces, raincoats, little moments people didn't notice. We were opposites that made sense until his old world started creeping into ours. The first time I heard Melissa Crane's name, it was over dinner. He mentioned her casually the way people mention weather. Melissa just got promoted again regional creative director. I smiled, because that's what supportive girlfriends do. That's great for her. He nodded, eyes still on his phone. Yeah, she always knew how to chase the next thing. Bold girl. It was nothing then, just a name. But like a hairline crack in glass, it spread silently through everything. Over time, Melissa became a presence in our apartment. Not in body, but in comparison. She was the measuring stick against which I didn't know I was being measured. Melissa loved scuba diving. Melissa could handle high-pressure clients. Melissa never settled. I remember one Sunday morning, pancakes again, the ritual I clung to. I poured the batter wrong and ruined the first one. Marcus laughed, but it had an edge. Melissa used to say the first one's always a test run. Then I must be failing the test, I said lightly. He kissed my forehead. Don't be so sensitive, babe. I'm just saying she had this perfectionist streak. It should have rolled off me. Instead, it clung. Every just saying felt like a pinprick, and I was running out of skin. Months passed, and I found myself changing quietly, trying to fit invisible criteria. I learned to order his favorite wine, read the same business books he quoted. I bought a blazer that made me feel like someone who made power moves. But inside, I was exhausted performing competence when all I'd ever wanted was connection. Sometimes at night, I'd lie awake watching the shadows across the ceiling and wonder when admiration had turned into audition. One evening, I came home early from a client meeting, determined to surprise him. I made his favorite garlic shrimp linguine and set the table with the fancy plates we rarely used. He walked in still on a call. I waited for the smile, the warmth. Instead, he waved for quiet and mouthed Melissa. I turned back to the stove, pretending not to hear the way his voice softened. You deserve that promotion, he said. You always did. When he hung up, I asked, trying to sound casual. How's Melissa these days? She's great, he said too quickly. Just work stuff. Then he looked at me with faint irritation, as if my curiosity were a breach of professionalism. I didn't push it, but that night I tasted metal instead of shrimp. The comparisons weren't always spoken aloud. Sometimes they lived in the silence between what he said and what he didn't. When I showed him a sketch I was proud of, he'd nod, distractedly murmuring, Looks good. You ever think about doing something bigger, like a startup design firm? Bennett Slation. Be more like her. I told myself he just wanted the best for me. That's what love was, right? Pushing each other to grow. But growth shouldn't feel like erosion. A year in the fracture lines deepened. We argued about nothing and everything, how I spent my days, my lack of urgency, my preference for quiet dinners over rooftop events. Once after I declined a networking party he wanted me to attend, he sighed. You know, Melissa would have loved that kind of crowd. She thrived on energy. Then maybe you should have stayed with her, I snapped before I could stop myself. The air froze. He stared at me as if I'd just broken something precious. Wow. You really don't know how to take a joke, do you? That was his favorite escape hatch, call it a joke, make me the humorless one. The weeks that followed were a blur of polite distance. We still said I love you, but it sounded like a formality, a placeholder for what used to be real. Our 4-year anniversary was coming up, and I decided to fix it the only way I knew how, by proving my worth. I saved up and booked a reservation at La Maison du Lys, the kind of place where the menu doesn't have prices and the waiters whisper. I imagined us laughing again, remembering why we started. I even wore the red dress he once said made me look like I belonged in a gallery painting. The night of the dinner, he showed up late, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't his usual brand. I tried not to notice. At first, everything seemed fine. We clinked glasses, traded stories about work. Then, somewhere between appetizers and mains, the shift happened. He glanced at his phone, smiled. Melissa just got engaged, he said, like he was announcing a stock price, to some venture capitalist. They're in Iceland right now. Engagement photos under the northern lights. I froze mid-bite. That's lovely. He shrugged. Say what you want, but she never settled. She always reached higher. You have to admire that. My pulse thudded in my ears. I forced a smile. I admire lots of things. Kindness for one. He chuckled, missing or ignoring the sting. You always make things about feelings. That's what keeps you small, Jennifer. You play it safe. There it was, the word that had haunted me for months, safe. I looked at him across the candlelight. For the first time, he felt like a spinnaker who'd wandered into my life by accident. I think I said quietly, "You're mistaking peace for boredom." He blinked, confused. What's that supposed to mean? It means I said setting down my fork. If you want chaos, maybe you should go chase it. He stared, trying to gauge if I was serious. I smiled, but it wasn't the kind he'd recognize. Happy anniversary, Marcus, I whispered, standing up. Then I left. Outside, the night air was sharp tasting of rain and release. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just walked, heels clicking like punctuation marks on the pavement. Behind me, the restaurant's laughter and clinking glasses faded into nothing. Ahead, the city stretched wide and unknowable. That was the moment I stopped trying to prove my worth and started remembering it. If anyone had told me that freedom could taste like heartbreak, I would have laughed. But that night, standing outside La Maison du Lys, my breath turning to mist in the cool air, I realized freedom isn't a clean break. It's jagged. It cuts on its way out. I didn't go home immediately. I walked, past glowing shop windows, through the chatter of couples spilling out of bars until my heels ached. I wanted to feel something, pain relief, anger, but all I felt was empty. When I finally got home, the apartment felt too curated, too quiet. Every object inside bore Marcus's invisible fingerprint. The wine glasses he'd chosen for aesthetic, the books he'd stacked to look intellectual, not to be read. I poured myself water instead of wine because I refused to toast to the end of us. The next morning he texted, "Marcus, we need to talk. Don't do this dramatic disappearing act." Me. There's nothing left to talk about. Marcus. You're overreacting. It was just an observation. You can't handle criticism without turning it into a crisis. There it was, the same tone he'd always used when I tried to express pain, the one that made me doubt my own perception. I typed and deleted a dozen replies before writing the only one that mattered. Me, no Marcus. I'm just finally listening to myself. Then I blocked his number. For the first time in 4 years, my phone was quiet. No notifications, no buzzing, no constant hum of someone's expectations in my pocket. The silence was unbearable for exactly 2 days. On the third, it became peaceful. I threw myself into work, though I could barely concentrate. My sketches were stiff, too controlled. Every time I tried to draw something lighthearted, it came out fractured. Still, I kept trying. Routine became my lifeline: morning coffee, emails, long walks. Anything to avoid staring at the space where his shoes used to sit by the door. But grief is a spenitage thing. It sneaks up during the smallest moments, like when I caught a whiff of his cologne on a scarf I hadn't worn since winter, or when a commercial played the same piano instrumental we danced to one New Year's Eve. My mind betrayed me with kindness, replaying the good parts, the way he used to trace lazy circles on my wrist. When we watched movies, the warmth of his laugh before ambition hardened it. Then just as quickly, it reminded me why I left. There's a difference between missing someone and missing who you thought they were. One Friday evening, I met Rachel, my best friend since college, for dinner. She took one look at me and groaned. "Tell me you're not still being polite about him." I poked at my salad. "I'm just trying not to hate him. Hate feels heavy. Jennifer, you don't have to hate him, but you do need to stop protecting his image." She leaned in, voice low. "You always wanted to be his calm, but maybe he needed a storm to wake up. That's not your failure." Her words hit deeper than I wanted to admit. I kept thinking if I worked harder, he'd see me. Rachel reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "He saw you, Mia. He just didn't know what he was looking at." That night I went home and deleted the last photo I had of us. Our smiles, too polished, our hands already distant. A week later, I got an email from one of Marcus's colleagues asking if I'd still be attending the firm's charity gala. Apparently he hadn't told anyone about the breakup. For a moment, I hovered over the Yes RSVP button. Old habits die hard. Then I smiled to myself, closed the email, and opened a new canvas on my tablet instead. The drawing that came out surprised me. A woman standing under a rainstorm, her face tilted upward, letting it fall without flinching. I titled it Unlearning. Months slipped by in shades of progress. I started painting again, taking on commissions that felt meaningful, not marketable. Rachel called it emotional rehab. I called it survival. Some days I was fine. Other days I woke up missing the sound of a second toothbrush tapping against the sink. Healing, I learned, isn't linear. Then one evening in late March, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I hesitated before answering. Hello. A pause, then a familiar voice, soft, uncertain. Jennifer. It's me. Marcus. Yeah. His voice cracked slightly. I wanted to check in, see how you're doing. I almost laughed. The audacity. You're checking in. I know you hate me right now, he rushed on. But I've been thinking, maybe we both said things we didn't mean. I gripped the phone tighter. No, Marcus, you said exactly what you meant. You just didn't expect me to listen. He was silent. I imagined him standing somewhere expensive and sterile like his condo, all glass and echo. You don't have to do this pride thing, he said finally. You know me better than anyone. I did. I corrected. And that's the problem. Then I hung up. After that night, I deleted his contact for good. I told Rachel the next day. She grinned. You didn't just close the door, you welded it shut. Yeah, I said, half smiling. But sometimes I still press my ear to it. She nodded. You will, until one day you don't even remember which door it was. April melted into May, and with each week, I felt myself returning to the woman I'd been before, only stronger. I started running again, sleeping better, even smiling without realizing it. But every Bennett's formation demands a trigger. Mine came unexpectedly from someone I hadn't heard from in years. One afternoon, my phone rang. The name flashed across the screen, Ryan Reed. Marcus's younger brother. My pulse quickened. I almost declined, but curiosity won. When I answered, his tone was awkward, careful. Hey, Jennifer, sorry to call out of nowhere. I just thought you should know something. What is it? He hesitated. It's about Marcus and Melissa. The name dropped like a pebble into still water. I hadn't heard it aloud in months. Ryan exhaled. They got engaged last month. But there's more. She made him sign this insane prenup. Basically, if they split, he gets nothing. Not a cent. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Ryan kept talking, his words tumbling over each other. He's miserable, Mia. Says she monitors every expense. Won't even let him buy a car without approval. I thought you should know. I smiled faintly, staring out the window at the fading light. Why? So I can feel sorry for him. He was quiet. I just thought you'd want to know he regrets it. No. Regret. The same word I used to whisper into my pillow back when I thought I'd be the one carrying it forever. But now it didn't sting. It felt distant, like watching rain hit a window I wasn't standing behind anymore. Tell him I said softly that some lessons are only learned in silence. Then I ended the call. The phone slipped from my hand onto the couch. Outside, thunder rolled low and steady. It wasn't vengeance that warmed me. It was peace. The night Ryan called, thunder rolled like a slow drum over the city. I sat by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass, and for the first time in months, I didn't flinch at the sound of Marcus's name. It was just noise now, background weather. That's when I realized the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was sacred. After the breakup, I used to fill every quiet moment with distractions, music, podcasts, phone calls, anything to drown out the echo of what I'd lost. But silence has a way of reshaping itself once you stop running from it. It stops sounding like absence and starts sounding like clarity. I woke early the next morning, made coffee, and opened my sketchbook. My hands trembled a little. For months, every line I drew felt uncertain, like even the paper doubted me. But now something inside had shifted. I didn't draw Marcus. I didn't draw heartbreak. I drew space. A woman walking barefoot on cracked ground, the wind in her hair, the world stretching wide around her. It wasn't beautiful. It was honest. That same afternoon, Rachel came over uninvited as usual, carrying a grocery bag filled with snacks and cheap wine. You look different, she said, kicking off her shoes. Peaceful. Creepy peaceful. Like you joined a monastery. I laughed. Just detoxing from chaos. Good. About time. You've been breathing other people's expectations for years. She plopped onto the couch, tearing open a bag of chips. So what's the new chapter? I hesitated. I don't know yet, but I'm not writing it for anyone else this time. Rachel nodded approvingly. That's my girl. Now drink this before I decide you've become enlightened and leave. We sat there watching a terrible rom-com, eating chips straight from the bag, and for the first time in a long time, I felt normal. No performance, no proving, just being. A few days later, I went to the gym for the first time in years. Not to change my body, but to reclaim it. Each weight I lifted was a word I'd never said. Each exhale was an apology I no longer owed. That night, while stretching, I noticed something spinach on my phone, a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Hey, it's me. No name, no greeting. Just me. My stomach tightened. I knew that tone like a scar. I didn't answer. I didn't even open the thread. I simply turned off my phone, set it face down, and went to sleep. The old me would have replied half out of guilt, half out of habit. The new me understood that silence was also a response, and sometimes the loudest one. The next morning, I met a new client at a small cafe downtown. He was a kind man in his late 40s who wanted illustrations for a children's book about courage. It's about a little bird who forgets how to fly, he explained. She keeps watching others take off, but can't remember how she used to do it herself. I smiled, something tugging in my chest. That's beautiful, he shrugged. I think it's about starting again. When he left, I stayed behind, sketching ideas on napkins. My bird wasn't small or weak. She had scars on her wings and eyes that had seen storms. That afternoon, I realized I wasn't just illustrating his story, I was drawing my own. By April, the world was soft again. I found myself humming when I cooked, lingering longer in the shower, laughing too loud at Rachel's jokes. I didn't feel like I was healing anymore. I felt like I was living. But life as I was learning loves its ironies. Because just when everything settled, Marcus reappeared. It started small, a message from another unknown number. Unknown. I saw one of your drawings online. You've gotten even better. I stared at the screen, heartbeat steady. Then I missed that side of you. I deleted it without replying. A day later, another came. She doesn't get me like you did. I blocked that one too. 3 days after that, be a woman and talk to me, Jennifer. I almost laughed. Be a woman. As if silence made me less one. That night, I met Rachel at our usual rooftop bar. The city glowed beneath us, neon alive and unapologetic. I told her about the texts. She snorted. He's not texting you because he loves you. He's texting because his reflection cracked, and you're the only mirror that ever made him look good. I sipped my drink, smiling. Well, this mirror is not available anymore. When I got home, I opened my window and let the wind in. The curtains billowed like wings. I thought about how I used to shrink to make room for him, how I used to hold my breath so his dreams could breathe. Not anymore. The next morning, I unblocked my phone, not to read anything, but because I wasn't afraid of what might come through anymore. I wasn't avoiding ghosts. I'd already outlived them. That afternoon, I received a new message, not from Marcus, but from an unknown sender with a different kind of tone. Unknown. Hey, this is Charlie from the art workshop last month. We're doing a gallery night this Friday. Thought you might want to come. I blinked, smiling despite myself. Charlie. Kind eyes, slightly messy hair, the one who'd said, your drawings feel like they're breathing. Maybe silence wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was just the space I needed to hear a new one beginning. That Friday I went. The gallery was small, but alive with color walls, lined with paintings that looked like confessions in pigment. Charlie spotted me near the back, waved, then pointed to a canvas I hadn't expected to see my own. Unlearning. I asked if they'd hang it, he said when I approached. Hope that's okay. I stared at the woman in the rain with her face tilted toward the sky. It's more than okay. He smiled softly. You know she doesn't look lost to me. No, he shook his head. She looks free. Something in my chest unknotted. I didn't blush, didn't deflect. I just said, maybe she finally is. When I got home that night, my apartment no longer felt haunted. It felt mine. I watered the plant that somehow hadn't died, put my phone on silent, and stood by the window again. The city lights reflected faintly in the glass, and for a split second I caught my own reflection looking back, not the woman Marcus had measured, but the woman who had finally learned to measure herself. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing the curtain against my arm. It felt like a whisper, not of regret, but of peace. The text came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon while I was mixing paint. The sky outside was the dull gray of unfinished business. Ryan Reed. I hadn't seen that name flash on my phone in over a year. For a second, I thought it was a mistake, maybe a wrong number, a scam, a ghost from the past pressing the wrong button. But curiosity has a cruel gravity. Ryan. Hey, Jennifer, hope you're doing okay. Do you have a minute? I stared at the words, the faint paint stain drying on my thumb. Ryan was Marcus's younger brother, the quiet one, the observer. He had always been kind to me in a way Marcus rarely noticed. Still old instincts kicked in. I almost ignored it. Then against my better judgment, I replied, Me, hey Ryan, yeah, what's going on? The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, Ryan, it's about Marcus. The world didn't tilt, but my stomach did. Me, what about him? He called. His voice sounded older, heavier. The easy laughter I remembered from family barbecues was gone. Jennifer, he began carefully. I wouldn't call unless I thought you should know. I saw him last week. He's not in a great place. I leaned back on my stool. That sounds like his problem, not mine. I know, Ryan said quickly, and you have every right to feel that way. But listen, he's with Melissa now. You probably heard I hadn't, but I didn't let him know that. I figured. They got engaged about 6 months ago. Ryan continued. But it's complicated. Complicated how? There was a long pause, like he was deciding whether to betray a confidence. Then she made him sign a prenup, a brutal one. He doesn't get anything if they split, not even his share of the apartment she bought. She basically treats him like an employee. He has to log every expense, Jennifer, every single one. I said nothing, just listened to the faint static on the line. He's miserable, Ryan went on. She controls everything. His schedule, his money, even who he talks to. He said she calls it structure. I could almost see it, the same confidence Marcus once admired in Melissa now weaponized against him. The hunter becoming the hunted. Ryan's voice dropped. He talks about you, you know. Says you were the only one who made him feel safe. Safe. The word landed like a dull blade. The very thing he used to scorn. The thing he said made me small. Now it was the thing he missed most. I took a slow breath. Ryan. I appreciate you calling, but whatever's happening between them isn't my business. It stopped being my business the day he walked out of that restaurant. I get that, Ryan said, almost pleading. He's not doing great. I stood pacing the studio. My fingers brushed against the rough edge of my canvas, the one Charlie had helped me hang after the gallery night. Then he should learn, I said softly. We all have to eventually. Ryan was quiet. I'm sorry, Jennifer, he said finally. You didn't deserve any of what happened. I know I said and meant it. Take care of your brother. Then I hung up. Afterward, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel vindicated. I just stood there staring at the wet streak of cobalt blue dripping down my canvas, watching how it bled into white, like something surrendering. There was a time when I would have imagined that phone call as an apology through proxy, a message from the universe that I'd been right all along. But truthfully, it didn't feel like justice. It felt like closure wearing ordinary clothes. I wiped my hands on a rag, walked to the kitchen, and made tea. The steam rose in curls, soft and unhurried. Outside, a beam of sun broke through the gray and hit the counter in a slant of gold. It felt symbolic, though I wasn't sure of what. Maybe of the difference between revenge and release. That weekend, Rachel and I met for brunch. She had a new haircut and her usual brutal honesty. So she said, between bites of avocado toast, You gonna tell me why your face looks like you just read someone's obituary and didn't hate it? I rolled my eyes. Ryan called. Her fork froze midair. Ryan. As in Marcus's baby brother. Ryan. I nodded. Apparently Marcus's engagement isn't going well. The prenup's a nightmare. He's miserable. Rachel leaned back, smirking. And let me guess part of you enjoyed hearing that. I stirred my coffee. Maybe a little, but mostly I felt tired. Tired is progress, she said, pointing her fork at me. Means you're done fighting ghosts. I smiled. You should put that on a mug. I will, and I'll send you royalties. We laughed, and for once it didn't feel like laughter built over pain. It was just easy, real. That night I dreamed of Marcus, but not the way I used to. He wasn't cruel or charming, or even remorseful. He was small, sitting at a table, papers scattered around him. Maybe the prenup Ryan mentioned, while Melissa stood in the doorway talking on her phone, her voice cold and clipped. He looked up at me in the dream and said, I thought I wanted power. I didn't answer. I just turned and walked away. When I woke, the dream clung to me like fog, but there was no ache, only clarity. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again, a different unknown number. I didn't recognize it, but I knew. I always knew. Unknown. You were right about everything. She's not who I thought she was. I can't breathe around her. I sat on the couch, the message glowing in the dim light. I could almost hear his voice again, that persuasive tone that once talked me into doubting myself. But this time it was only words on a screen. Just pixels. I typed a reply, paused, then deleted it. Instead, I opened my music app, played the song I'd avoided for months, the one we used to dance to. It didn't hurt anymore. It just sounded like another song. Then, with steady hands, I tapped block. The next morning, Charlie stopped by my studio to drop off coffee. He leaned against the doorframe, his usual gentle grin in place. "You look like you slept well." "I did," I said, surprised to realize it was true. "Good," he said, "because we're taking a day off. The weather's perfect, and I'm kidnapping you for a drive to the coast." I laughed. "Kidnapping, huh?" "That's bold." "Artist orders," he said, handing me a cup. "You've earned some sunlight." I hesitated for a heartbeat, the old reflex of guilt, as if joy needed permission. Then I nodded. "Give me 5 minutes." As we drove along the highway, the ocean came into view, vast, endless, forgiving. Charlie turned the music low. "You ever think about what you'd say to him if he showed up again?" I looked out the window. Nothing. 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 I repeated. Silence says everything he refused to hear. Charlie smiled, eyes still on the road. "That's poetic. It's peace," I corrected. He glanced at me, sunlight spilling through the windshield. "Then I'm glad you found it." That evening, after he dropped me home, I stood by the window again, the same one I'd cried beside months ago. The city hummed softly outside. Somewhere, Marcus was probably rereading his own messages, looking for a response that would never come. Somewhere, Melissa was probably setting new boundaries he didn't like. And somewhere in between, my past had finally stopped echoing. I picked up my sketchbook and drew a single line, clean, straight, unbroken. Sometimes that's all healing is, one final line drawn in peace. It always starts the same way, unknown number. A small gray bubble that flashes across your screen and freezes you mid-breath. I was at the gym when the first one came through, a Monday evening. My headphones and my focus locked on the rhythmic count of reps. The phone buzzed on the bench beside me, and even before I looked, I knew. Unknown. "Hey, I saw a photo of you from the gallery. You look happy." I miss that smile. For a moment, I stared at it. Once that kind of message would have sent my heart racing, equal parts hope and pain. But now it was just data. Text on glass. I placed the phone face down and finished my set. The barbell felt heavier than usual, but so did my piece. 2 days later, another one arrived. Unknown. "You were right about Melissa. About everything. I feel trapped." I didn't respond. I just whispered to myself, "Of course you do." Later that night, Rachel came over with Thai takeout and her usual blunt commentary. I told her about the messages. She grinned around a mouthful of noodles. "Congratulations. You've officially reached the regret tour stage. Every narcissist's greatest hit. Don't make it sound like a badge of honor," I said. "Oh, it is," she said. "It means you finally broke the spell. He's chasing an echo now." Her words hit deep, because that was exactly what it felt like, an echo. Not a voice calling for connection, but a hollow sound bouncing off the walls of his own regret. By Friday, the tone had shifted. Unknown. "Are you seriously ignoring me? After everything, unknown. You always talked about forgiveness. Where's that now? Unknown, be an adult and talk to me, Jennifer." I laughed, an actual laugh, full-bodied and incredulous. "Forgiveness," he said. The man who once measured my worth against another woman's now demanding closure on his schedule. I showed Rachel the texts and she whistled. "He's really leaning into the self-pity genre. I think he's confusing forgiveness with access," I said. She raised her glass. "Cheers to revoked access." We toasted, and for the first time I didn't feel anger or pity, just distance. A clean, beautiful distance. The following week, I started teaching weekend art workshops. Small groups, mostly women in their 30s and 40s, some divorced, some newly single, all trying to rediscover pieces of themselves. We painted in silence at first, the air heavy with unspoken stories. Then, gradually, laughter began to replace the quiet. One afternoon, a woman named Layla said, I'm painting, what I wish I could say to my ex. What's that? I asked. She smiled sadly. That I survived him. Something inside me cracked open not from pain but recognition. Because I had too. That night when I got home, I poured myself tea and sat by the window. The city outside looked like a living organism, lights blinking, cars moving like arteries. My phone buzzed again. Unknown. You think silence makes you strong, it just makes you cold. I was right about you. The old Jennifer might have cried, the one who once believed every accusation deserved an answer. But now I smiled. Because that text said more about him than it ever could about me. I opened the thread, scrolled through the months of unanswered messages, and realized something simple. He was still trying to perform control even in defeat, and I was done being part of the show. Block! Just one tap, no tremor in my hand, no nostalgia. Just finality. A week passed, then another. The quiet that followed felt different this time, not an empty pause, but a symphony of relief. I filled my days with creation instead of reaction. The studio walls bloomed with new canvases, women dancing in storms, women asleep on fields of color, women standing tall in darkness. Each one looked a little like me. Charlie visited, sometimes helping me hang paintings or bringing me lunch I didn't ask for. He had that rare kind of gentleness that didn't need to be announced. One afternoon, while adjusting a frame, he said, "You've got a real calm about you lately." I smiled. "That's because I stopped trying to earn peace from people who can't give it." He grinned. "Mind if I quote you on that? Only if you spell my name right." But peace doesn't mean forgetfulness. Sometimes memories still slip through the faint smell of his cologne in a crowd, the way certain songs still know my pulse. The difference now is that I don't chase them away. I let them pass like traffic noise outside a window. Present, but harmless. One rainy afternoon, I received an email from S. Benetker. The subject line read, "Your work moved me." It was from a woman named Claire who'd seen my piece Unlearning at the gallery. She wrote, "I left a man who made me feel small. Your painting looked like the moment I walked out. Thank you for showing what freedom looks like." I read the message twice, then pressed a hand to my chest. For so long, I thought my story was one of failure, a woman who couldn't hold on to the man she loved. But maybe it wasn't failure. Maybe it was testimony. That night I painted again, not sadness, not revenge, but light. 2 weeks later, as if the universe were testing my resolve, another unknown number appeared. Unknown, you'll never find someone who understands you like I did. I looked at the message for a long time. Then I whispered to the quiet room, "You're right, I already did." My eyes flicked to the photo pinned above my desk, a candid of me and Charlie from the gallery night. No drama, no fireworks, just warmth. Real understanding doesn't demand performance. It just stays. I set the phone down and turned back to my canvas. Outside, the rain had stopped. The world smelled new. I dipped my brush into yellow, the color of sunrise, and began again. It's spinach how a year can pass without you realizing when the healing became habit. One day you wake up and the quiet isn't heavy anymore. It's home. That morning, sunlight spilled through my apartment like forgiveness. The air smelled faintly of paint and jasmine tea. My plants, once on the brink of death, were thriving, little green proof that consistency, not intensity, is what keeps things alive. I stood before the mirror, tying my hair into a loose bun, and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked lighter, not untouched by pain, but reshaped by it. A year since that dinner. A year since the night I walked out of La Maison du Lit and into myself. And I hadn't heard from Marcus in months. Not a message, not a whisper. His absence had finally stopped echoing. I poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one Rachel had made me, that said, "Safe is not small." She'd given it to me the day I launched my online portfolio, insisting I needed a reminder that my piece wasn't mediocrity, it was mastery. The website had unexpectedly taken off. Commissions trickled in from expenditures who'd seen Unlearning at the gallery. I wasn't famous, but for the first time I was fulfilled. Every drawing felt like an unspoken truth finding its shape. Charlie had become a quiet fixture in that world. He never pushed, never demanded to be the center of it. He'd just show up with coffee with a new brush, with that grin that said, "You've got this." He wasn't a savior. He was a witness. And sometimes that's all healing needs, a steady presence that doesn't need to fix you. That afternoon, I met Charlie at a cozy cafe downtown, the same one where we'd met months ago for the gallery night. The barista knew our order by heart. He arrived first, sketchbook in hand, grinning. "You're 5 minutes late. I call it artistic timing." He laughed. Then I'll stop wearing a watch. We spent an hour talking about everything and nothing. His design project, my latest commission, the cat Rachel was threatening to adopt. When I laughed, it wasn't the kind of laugh you force to prove you're fine. It was effortless, real. And then as I reached for my bag, I froze. At the door, standing there hesitant but unmistakable Marcus. He looked smaller, not physically, but in presence. The sharp suit was gone, replaced by a rumpled button-down. His confidence, the thing he used to wear like armor, hung off him like an old coat. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, time rewound the restaurant, the rain, the ache. He smiled weakly. Jennifer. Charlie followed my gaze, his brow furrowing. You okay? I nodded slowly. Yeah, just surprised. Marcus hesitated, then approached the table. Can I talk to you? Just for a second. I looked at Charlie. He gave a small nod. I'll grab us refills. As he walked to the counter, Marcus took the seat across from me. Up close, he looked tired. His hands fidgeted with the sleeve of his shirt. You look good. I am, I said simply. He exhaled the sound somewhere between a sigh and a confession. Melissa and I were done. She left. I'm not surprised. He blinked at the flatness in my tone. I thought you'd at least, I don't know, react. To what you reaping, what you sowed. He flinched. I deserve that. Yeah, I said. You do. For a long moment, he stared at his hands. I just wanted to tell you you were right. About everything. I thought ambition made me powerful. Turns out it just made me alone. I leaned back, my heartbeat steady. He looked up, eyes glistening. I keep thinking about that night. How calm you were when you walked away. I didn't understand it then. Do you now? He swallowed. I think so. You'd already started leaving long before you stood up. That was true. I had. Quietly in the spaces where love turned into labor. I'm sorry, he said finally, for everything I took for granted. I studied him, really looked at him. The man who once made me question if kindness was enough. And for the first time, I saw not the villain of my story, but the chapter I'd already finished reading. I'm not going to say, I told you so, I said softly. That would mean I've been thinking about it, or about you. He blinked, as if the air had been knocked out of him. I haven't, I added. His voice cracked. You really mean that I do? Just then, Charlie returned with 2 coffees. Everything okay here? Everything's fine, I said, turning to him with an easy smile. We were just finishing. Marcus's gaze flickered between us, the comfortable silence, the unforced warmth, and something in his face shifted. He realized. Too late, but he realized. I should go, he said, standing. Take care of yourself, Jennifer. I already do, I replied. He paused as if waiting for me to look back. I didn't. He left quietly, the door chime soft behind him. Charlie sat sliding the cup toward me. Old flame, old lesson, I said. He chuckled. Seemed like he needed that reminder more than you did. Maybe, I said, but I needed to see it too, to know I'm really free. Charlie reached across the table, brushing his thumb against the back of my hand. Then here's to freedom. I raised my cup in a small toast, and to not mistaking peace for boredom. He smiled. Exactly. Outside, the sun slipped low, painting the windows in gold. That night when I got home, I took the last remaining photo of Marcus and me from years ago, hidden in an old drawer, and placed it in a box labeled The Past. Then I tucked it away, not out of bitterness, but gratitude. He wasn't the villain in my story. He was the test that proved I'd finally learned the lesson. And as I stood there, surrounded by quiet and the faint smell of turpentine and tea, I realized something simple, profound, and whole. I'd never needed closure from him. I'd already given it to myself. It's been 14 months since I walked out of that restaurant, 14 months since I stopped mistaking survival for love. Some mornings I still wake before dawn. The city hums faintly outside the sky, pale and waiting. I make tea, open the window, and let the wind in. It smells different now, not of rain and endings, but of new beginnings quietly unfolding. I don't replay our story anymore. I remember it the way you remember an old scar, not with pain, but with recognition. Proof that I lived, that I healed, that I learned. That weekend, Charlie and I drove up to the coast. It wasn't an anniversary or an escape, just something spontaneous. He liked to call them breathing trips. We'd pack too many snacks, pick a random playlist, and drive until the city disappeared behind us. The ocean stretched ahead, vast, infinite, forgiving. We walked barefoot along the shoreline, our shadows long and blurred in the late afternoon light. Charlie skipped a stone across the water. Do you ever think about him? He asked softly. Marcus, I nodded once. Sometimes, but not the way I used to. It's more like remembering a storm. You don't resent the rain, you just remember that you learned to carry an umbrella. He smiled. You always have the best metaphors. I used to paint them to understand myself, I said. Now I just live them. We stood in comfortable silence. Waves hissed against the sand, retreating and returning like breath. Charlie turned to me. You know what I like about you? I raised an eyebrow. You only get one answer. Choose wisely. He grinned. You're calm, but not the kind of calm that hides fear. The kind that comes after surviving chaos. You wear peace like someone who earned it. I didn't respond right away. I just took his hand, our fingers intertwining with quiet certainty. Later that evening, we found a small seafood diner tucked off the road. The air smelled like salt and butter, the lights dim and soft. The kind of place where time slows down. Charlie ordered for both of us, remembering that I hated oysters, but loved clam chowder. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number again. My breath caught for a fraction of a second, old reflex. But when I flipped it over, it wasn't him. It was from the art gallery. Congratulations, Jennifer, your piece. Unlearning has been selected for the annual showcase, opening night next month. I laughed, startling the table beside us. Charlie looked up. Good news. I handed him the phone. They picked my painting. He grinned. Of course they did. That piece looks like it's breathing. I smiled. It feels like it too. The following month, the gallery buzzed with quiet applause and warm lights. Spinnaker stood in front of unlearning, whispering, pointing, smiling. But what caught my eye wasn't the crowd, it was the reflection of myself in the glass. The woman in the painting, standing under the rain chin, tilted upward, looked freer than the one who painted her. But only slightly. Rachel showed up halfway through the event, holding a ridiculous bouquet of sunflowers. My favorite emotionally evolved friend, she shouted, causing 3 people to turn. You did it. I laughed. What did I do? Turn pain into art, she said, pressing the flowers into my hands, and art into power. I hugged her, breathing in the warmth of familiarity. You always make it sound grander than it feels. It is grand, she said. You just learn to live without needing applause for it. A week later, I received another message, this time from a woman I didn't know. Hi, Jennifer. I stumbled on your story online. I left someone who kept comparing me to his ex. Your words helped me remember that quiet doesn't mean weak. Thank you. I sat there for a long time, reading it again and again. For years, I'd thought the lesson was mine alone. But healing I was learning isn't meant to be hoarded. It's meant to be handed forward. Sometimes late at night, I wonder what Marcus's life looks like now. Maybe he's with someone new. Maybe he's alone. Maybe he's still chasing a version of himself that doesn't exist anymore. But it doesn't matter, because I no longer need to be the answer to his story. He was never my villain. He was my teacher, and the lesson was simple. Love should never make you disappear. Last Sunday, Charlie and I walked through the market near my building. The sky was orange, the air alive with chatter. He bought me tulips, even though I told him not to. We stopped at a coffee stand, sharing a cup too small for 2 people, and laughed when foam spilled onto our hands. He brushed my cheek with his thumb eyes warm. You're quiet, he said. I'm happy, I replied. I think they just sound the same sometimes. He nodded understanding. When I got home that night, I hung a new canvas blank untouched, waiting. I stood there for a while, brush in hand, not knowing what to paint. Then I smiled, because that's what freedom is, not knowing and not being afraid of it. I dipped my brush into gold and made the first stroke. Outside, the city lights shimmered. The air smelled of rain again, but this time I didn't brace myself. Because rain wasn't the enemy. It was the reminder that things grow after they fall. I looked out the window one last time, whispered to the night that once held my grief. I hope you find what you're looking for, Marcus.